it feels like I'm split into two different people. There's a version of me that wakes up every morning smelling spice in the air and hearing the calls of Nicheyake Kanabanao directed only at me. This girl stands in the kitchen helping her nanny chop vegetables and listens to lectures about covering up or fixing her clothes and her attitude. This girl forces herself to ignore messages from family friends bragging about their own kids' accomplishments in some kind of silent competition. This girl says Alafis before she leaves her house, shutting the door on one side of her life. Then that girl transforms. She becomes a new girl, and this girl is more comfortable in clothes that expose more of her skin and listens to music with words her dad can't even pronounce and says jokes that she would get yelled at for even leaving her mouth anywhere near her house. These two girls are completely different, yet trapped inside one body. And before anyone asks, no, this isn't like a Criminal Minds or Mr. Robot situation. Please don't call the cops. Everything that I just described is an experience that thousands of kids go through every day, as they're forced to live with the same kind of dichotomy inside of them, where the cultural conflict of having to assume one persona out home and another persona outside among their peers can weigh down and muddle their overall sense of identity. This is especially true for children of immigrants like myself who live in Western societies. They not only have to deal with having to fit the cultural standards and expectations of success that their parents have for them, given their own sacrifices, while simultaneously trying to conform to the norms of American or Western societies, but they also have to face an obstacle that isn't expressed as much, but is still very real and very present in children of immigrants' lives. And that is having to financially and emotionally support their parents. Because of things like our flawed US system, there are so many families out there that are living without the essentials such as a federally mandated living wage, accessible health care, or affordable housing. There are countless families out in the world struggling and also having to deal with the xenophobia and racism towards immigration, especially in America. That's why it's no surprise that 10 to 15% of children born in immigrant families in the US suffer from signs of depressive anxiety or traumatic stress disorders. And these are only the reported and diagnosed numbers. And there was also a study done in 2006 by the National Survey of American Life that revealed that 35.3% of second-gen and 54.6% of third-gen immigrants showed signs of lifetime prevalence and risk of any psychiatric disorder, even if it hadn't revealed itself at the time. These numbers are especially significant when compared to the fact that only 19.3% of first-gen immigrants showed the risk of having the same. Now, while these numbers might not be the biggest or seem super important, they're especially significant when you consider the fact that in reality, these rates are exceptionally higher than reported. A major issue in children of immigrants' mental health that oftentimes continues the degradation of their mental health is cultural barriers. Due to certain environments that they grew up in, these children have to face internalized stigmas about reaching out for help, misinformation about the kind of resources they have, and are oftentimes uninformed on the treatments that they'd receive. Cultural traditions are what shape a lot of these issues, since in most non-Western cultures, they value things like privacy, a pride in self-reliance, a preference for non-Western medical treatment, and a kind of distrust with the American medical system. This leads to the children repressing, ignoring, or even normalizing their struggles, especially in comparison to their parents' own experiences, which makes any trauma or stress that they receive seem trivial or unimportant in comparison. The only second-gen immigrants that receive a diagnosis for their mental health are those that have been in an extreme or emergency mental health crisis, which can unfortunately lead to complications in their treatment and adds to lifetime prevalence of their illness. So despite rising to meet the multifaceted challenges of supporting their family, they still have no outlet to reach out for help and deal with their own stress, which needs to change. Obviously, this issue is very complex, and it's impossible to come up with one simple, singular solution for it. But personally, I think that if we focus on two elements, that we can begin to make a change. The first aspect, which may seem basic and kind of like a blanket statement at first, is spreading awareness and education about mental health. My brother, Sammy, was diagnosed with autism when he was born. My mom devoted her everything into helping his development. And no matter how tired she got or how many sacrifices she had to make, she never complained and she never blamed him or anyone for something so obviously out of anyone's control. Unfortunately, just because she could abandon her cultural stigmas for him didn't mean that everyone in our community could. I have countless memories of being at a party or at a mosque or even at the grocery store and just feeling the weight of what seemed like thousands of eyes on us, staring and judging, and hearing whispers in Urdu about gossiping about my brother's behavior, calling it embarrassing or shocking, and even making implications about my mom's parenting sometimes. Obviously, we try to ignore it because they don't matter, and we know that. However, sometimes it gets to be too much. And that's when my mom did what I personally think is the bravest thing she could have done in that situation. And she arranged a meeting at our local Sunday school to talk about autism and what it really means. As a doctor, she was able to even go more in depth about the topic of mental health itself and how certain stigmas and stereotypes in our community just aren't true and actually harmful. And shockingly, instead of laughing at her or just inciting more gossip about her and our family, the parents there began to ask more questions. Most of them could barely speak English and had never received a proper education in their life. So to have someone like my mom who could explain these concepts to them in a way that they understand and in a language that they understand was completely new to them. Rather than mocking the idea of depression or anxiety, they wanted to learn more about it. And you could say that this incident was completely anecdotal and it wouldn't apply overall. But personally, I think that it really does display the power that education can have when taught in the right way to the right communities. That's why I think that part of the solution has to be the integration of free seminars or classes about the topic of mental health that target issues specifically found in first and second-gen immigrants and are held in culturally focused places like an Islamic Sunday school and taught by people in the same or similar communities so that the immigrants listening have someone who understands their mindset, which not only makes this education more accessible, but can have a greater impact on the understanding in the community overall. By attacking the root of a lot of children of immigrants' mental health issues, which are toxic cultural norms, it's the key to allowing these second-gen immigrants to reach out and get the help that they need when they need it. The second aspect we have to focus on is providing more mental health services and healthcare providers that are more concentrated in communities that need them and can better identify the issues specifically found among immigrants and children of immigrants. By having a healthcare provider that can better understand the cultural barriers that might be in the way of treatment, you can have someone that can provide a better care and better explain the issue to the patient. Providers can help minimize these cultural stigmas by integrating their own culturally tailored services during checkups or schools or community resources, and by targeting the community as a whole, fostering belonging and reducing discrimination and providing social support, it can help facilitate healing for these children. The day we begin to integrate programs and resources like the ones I named is the day that we can begin to break apart these toxic cultural stigmas and open the door to allow children of immigrants and even immigrants themselves to receive the mental health care that they need. Personally, my culture will never change, and I never want it to change. I'll always wake up with the same smell in the air, speak the same language, and say Allah Hafiz before I leave. And I know that that also comes with having to face the same expectations and the same judgment and the same stereotypes. However, I truly believe that by allowing more specific awareness and education and resources targeted at the right communities, we can begin to allow children of immigrants to receive the support that they need and they deserve, and that's what matters. Thank you.